Have you ever gotten something you thought you wanted, really wanted, only to realize it's making you completely miserable? Well, this is a story all about that feeling, and it uncovers a pretty surprising truth about what actually makes us happy at work. It's a journey that really comes down to a few very hard but very necessary deep dive conversations.
Okay, let's just start right there. That single sentence pretty much flips everything we think about success completely on its head, right? For the person in our story, a promotion wasn't some kind of victory. It was the beginning of a huge personal crisis. So how on earth did he get there? Well, believe it or not, the story starts in a much happier place.
So we actually begin our story with a time our guy calls the happy demotion. Yeah, you heard that right. It was a time when taking what looked like a step backward on the career ladder somehow felt like a giant leap forward for his own happiness. So you gotta picture this. After some struggles at his job, he gets assigned what most people would call grunt work. He and his colleague even got made fun of for it by their coworkers. But then, a really weird thing started to happen. He didn't mind. Actually, he was starting to really enjoy his job again.
And this was the project they were working on, the Llama project. Look at this list. This isn't exactly high-level corporate strategy. We're talking designing flyers, making t-shirts and buttons for the local zoo, stuff like that. It might have seemed silly to everyone else, but for him, it was sparking this real, genuine joy.
And that's the central puzzle of this whole thing. He was happier. His wife, Anna, could see he was happier, but he couldn't tell you why. He was doing what was considered lower-level work, but he felt fantastic, and he just decided not to question it, which that meant he skipped the most important, deep-dive conversation of all, the one he needed to have with himself.
All right, so now let's see how this all leads to the first major turning point in the story. The good times start rolling, he starts achieving conventional success, and right alongside it comes this creeping, awful sense of dread.
And for a little while, life was, well, it was exactly what you'd hope for. He was climbing the ladder, he got married to Anna, they had their first son, Matthew. The Sunday scaries were a thing of the past. Everything was going according to plan. And then, that terrible thing happened. He got the promotion.
On paper, this promotion was perfect. More money, his own office, bigger responsibilities. He was absolutely ecstatic. But that feeling, it lasted for about a month. Then, the shine just completely wore off.
He describes it as this slow, creeping thing, like the joy was just leaking out of him. A small problem here, a tough conversation there, and that old familiar dread on Sunday nights, it started coming back. But he didn't dare say anything to Anna. With a young family, he felt this enormous pressure to be stable. So he just buried it and tried to push through.
And this brings us to a really pivotal moment, his annual performance review. Something that should have been totally routine turns into one of those super uncomfortable but totally necessary deep dive conversations.
And here's the spark that lit the fuse. This was his review. It's not a total train wreck, but if you're a high achiever, seeing meets expectations feels like a failing grade. He was angry, he was confused, he just didn't see the problem. So his manager, a guy named Chaz, he just cuts through all the corporate jargon and asks the one question that really matters. Not, are the clients happy or are we hitting our targets, but are you happy? It's such a simple, direct question, and it just floored him. So of course he gives the automatic answer, yeah, of course I'm happy. But Chaz wasn't buying it for a second. He just stops him and says, Bull, you don't seem happy. And you know what? Your people don't seem all that happy either.
Whoa.
And right there is the killer blow. He starts getting defensive, how would you know how my team feels? And that's when Chaz drops the hammer with just 3 words. I asked them.
And in that moment, he was just frozen. What can you possibly say to that? There's no comeback. All his defenses just completely crumbled.
And this just captures that feeling perfectly. On the one hand, here's what he was screaming in his head, what he wanted to say to Chaz. But on the other hand, here's what actually happened. Total paralysis. He just sat there, defeated, his mind already racing, wondering how in the world he was going to explain this to Anna.
So that conversation with Chaz was a breaking point at work. But, work misery, it doesn't stay at work. It bleeds into your home life. And that's what led to a second and maybe even more critical deep dive conversation. So for the next 6 months, instead of dealing with the problem, he just tried to power through it. He worked harder, was home less, and when he was home, he was just grumpy, and distant. He wasn't the husband or the father he wanted to be, and Anna was really feeling the strain. And finally, it all comes to a head in their kitchen. He finally confesses, "I'm hating my job again." And Anna is just crushed. She starts crying. But just when the conversation hits rock bottom, she completely changes the subject with this shocking news. "By the way, I'm pregnant." And just like that, all the work worries just evaporate. They're celebrating. I mean, talk about an emotional roller coaster.
So, with another baby on the way, the pressure was just immense. This wasn't just about his own happiness anymore. It was about the stability of his growing family. He knew he had to do something, and he had to do it fast. And then, just when he needed it, an escape route just appeared.
Look at how fast this all happens. It's incredible. Day 1, a headhunter calls. Just 2 days later, he's having lunch. A few days after that, boom, he's in a new job with a 20% raise. And only 4 days into the new gig, he felt happier than he had ever been. A total whirlwind turnaround.
But here's the key. He was thrilled about the money, obviously, but he knew deep down that wasn't the real reason he felt so relieved. He understood that his happiness was tied to the work, but he still couldn't put his finger on exactly what that something was. The mystery wasn't solved.
So, for the next 7 years, life was good. They had more kids, he was enjoying his work, he became a VP, and his job satisfaction was just a given. He kind of took it for granted. He had escaped the problem, but he never really understood it.
And this is where it all comes full circle. Everything seemed perfect. He was successful, he was happy, he'd found his groove. Until one day, an announcement changed everything. We're left hanging. And it leaves us with this big question. What happens when we build a successful life on a foundation that we don't actually understand? What happens when we never have that deep dive conversation with ourselves to figure out what truly makes us tick?